Welcome, everyone, to Nonprofit Problem Solver, episode 55. We're going to be speaking to Julie Morries all about thought leadership for nonprofits. Before we jump right into that, let me just say thank you to my sponsor, YotMe, the virtual events platform, 100% free to nonprofits, and PodPro Audio, making professional podcasting easy. Okay, so we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're watching live, you want to throw a comment in the usual place, we will pick it up on this end and we will try to incorporate it into our conversation. If, however, you're watching at a later point, also feel free to drop in a comment, tag either Julie or myself, and we will do our best to respond. Let's keep the conversation going. So with that, welcome, Julie. How are you?
I'm well. Great to see you, Kev.
Yeah, nice to see you too. I've been looking forward to this topic because I know we could go into this in great detail. So the question here is, how can nonprofits be thought leaders? And implicit in that is that thought leadership is understood, that it's good, that it's valuable. So
Indeed.
I think we have a bit of unpacking here to do before we get to the how. So let's just start at really, really basics. How did you define thought leadership? We see it in so many LinkedIn profiles and so on, but it's not the I think, therefore I lead. So what does thought leadership actually mean?
You know, the definition is probably one of the most hotly contested. I mean, if you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 definitions. So instead of thinking about maybe what that definition is, maybe we could talk about what it looks like. And then people can connect it pretty easily to their own experience. But if, let's say, I'm a nonprofit leader. Let's say that I'm trying to consider what I can do to communicate our mission, but I'm seeing that what we're communicating through the brand or through the nonprofit doesn't really seem to be getting a lot of results. So I could think to myself, well, I have my way of communicating. So I'm going to just talk about it. I'm the leader. People want to hear from the leader. So I'm going to use my own words. I'm going to use my background, my experiences, my passion for the topic, the subject, and I'm going to take all that and I'm just going to start talking. And it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to start writing. I'm going to start speaking, and I'm going to start sharing from the heart on why this is critical, on why people need to take notice of our work, but notice the topic in general. And so it kind of looks like that. So thought leadership could be that you are deciding to be, you're willing to be a face of this subject. You're willing to put yourself on a platform and be seen and be noticed. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to fumble. You're going to flail. It's not going to feel natural. And especially for nonprofit leaders, it's going to probably feel like sometimes a little shameful because all of a sudden you're on the platform. It's not really like that. You're just trying to be a vehicle for the ideas. But it's going to feel like you're trying to seek a spotlight. So that's not a happy feeling for a lot of our folks here in nonprofit land.
Right. Okay. So there's lots there. Okay. Yeah. So let's get into it. Okay. So the writing or the speaking that a nonprofit leader is doing is about what? Is it about their experience of being a leader? Is it about the field in which their nonprofit operates? For example, homelessness or domestic violence or children's literacy? Is it about that? Or could it be any of those things?
Most often, when you're thinking about, the very tactical aspects of thought leadership as an organization leader, you are expected to talk about things that are relevant to both you, but also to the organization you lead. Very often we're not that disconnected from our work. A lot of us are here because it's a deep passion of ours for a lot of reasons, right? So we'll pull that in very often. And occasionally you'll see a little bit, tangential, whether it's your family or your personal life or, some cross-sector kind of interests and things of that nature. But a lot of it does have to do with your mission.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. I just wanted to clarify, because otherwise, as you said, it may be uncomfortable being in the spotlight, but if someone's speaking entirely about their own experience as a leader, they may not be too shy about the spotlight. And that's really, as you said, it's not really about them personally. It's about leading thought rather than projecting their own personal brand, but it's tied up to with their personal brand to a certain extent, isn't it?
It is. And very often we just need to get people to start. And starting will feel unnatural regardless of what you're talking about. And so, if we're thinking about a thought leader with really no foundation just yet, and it's at the very beginning of that journey, I don't care what you talk about almost, because you just need to get used to saying something, and whatever that go-to thing is that you're comfortable about, I don't care if it is your golden retriever. Just start opening up and connecting with people and being you. And very quickly that refines into what they perceive and see as their opportunity to really start putting their mission in there. And, again, we can connect that personal brand aspect, but putting their mission out there to really help their nonprofit success. So
I can see a couple of conflicts here. One, we mentioned personal brand, which is another buzzword, like
yeah.
thought leadership. Ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different versions of what
Yes.
personal branding means. But from the organization's perspective, if the executive director is out there talking about the mission and the role that the organization plays in fulfilling it and so on, then as another person, another employee or a volunteer or a board member or the board chair or president,
Yes.
I'm probably pretty happy with that.
Yes.
But if I feel that the person may be pushing his or her own agenda or personal brand, like, where does that line exist between the person's being the face of the organization and then leading on elements of thought? Particularly, as you said, it's so messy and it's unscripted often, and it's
Yes.
from the heart, and it's
Yes.
sincere, and so therefore it's personal rather than sort of corporate, I guess, for lack of a better term.
It is. It is not very often. Like, if we're thinking about what can go wrong with like with the senior team putting themselves out there trying to build a thought leadership platform, it is perhaps maybe 10-15% of the time where it's like, whoa, this was really off. But it doesn't generally stay that way. There are, after someone puts something out there and they see how an audience reacts or doesn't react, and that's enough of a reaction, right?
Right.
They will self-correct. They will find that place of going, well, that didn't hit, or someone said something to me, or they grow up a little, right? Like, I think the mistake you just shared, it's like, it's inevitable at some point, but it's also kind of one of those baby steps that you eventually walk through and walk out. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about with folks that are new to this idea and uncomfortable with this idea is you have to have people to follow. For some, if I'm in venture capital or if I'm in nonprofit, like, find people in your sector that you admire, that you see that they're intentionally trying to build that platform, and they're putting out language that you admire. They're not being icky about it. It looks genuine, it looks thoughtful, it looks helpful to the field. Follow like 3 of those people and just watch how they do it. And they can pick up on tone, they can pick up on the good boundary lines to have. And it's not so mysterious after you see some good examples and get comfortable doing it. But yeah, occasionally, someone on your board someone has to be willing to go, hey, I saw what you wrote. Probably didn't need to be said that way. Like, having an accountability person, especially if you don't have someone external that you've brought on to work, you see this a lot more in like the corporate side. They will have a communications person assigned to you. It's generally from an agency, and they are working with you to craft words. In the nonprofit sector, we probably don't have that kind of capacity. So grab someone on your development side and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Can you keep an eye on me?
Right. What's interesting, I think, there you're referring to this notion of self-correction, where really you're doing a very human thing.
Yes.
In getting out and interacting with people using all the digital technologies and the platforms, of course, but doing that, treating it as a very human endeavor. It can be raw. It's got to be almost as though you were speaking to someone in person.
Yes.
And often it may take that form.
That's great.
And so it's not going to be perfect. And we're basically saying, go about this with some grace and allowances, that it's not going to be it's not super scripted, super polished.
Yes.
That's just it. We're not doing this mistake-free ad campaign.
Correct.
We're talking about being very human and real and genuine and sincere, and making connections of that kind.
Yes. Yes, we are. And I think you hit on a really valuable part of it, and that's connections. It's
Yeah,
really
that's got to
trying to
be, it
build
seems
that.
to me, the
Yes,
objective. So what,
it
we're
is.
not doing thought lead. So this is what the next question was going to cover, is like, why would we do thought leadership? What value does it
Yes.
bring? I mean, why shouldn't we just be out fundraising or perfecting our programs and optimizing our impact and digging deep into our CRMs for that next segment in for the end of year
I don't
campaign?
disagree with any of those
Instead,
ideas, right? But yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So, well, let me ask you this. What does it look like to fundraise now? I mean, like, when we
it's
think about what
it's
does it look like,
connections based,
yeah,
certainly.
it's connection based, right? And it's virtual, and
Digital,
more
yeah.
often than not. And it's done with a heartfelt, thoughtful, intentional plea and call to action. It's casting vision. It's doing all of those things that fundraising does. It's just doing it from the senior team platform rather than only from that brand platform. So, I mean,
Right.
it's really kind of there anyway. But as I was thinking about today, and I was thinking about, like, what is the one thing that I wish people could get from this? And that is, to the point of what your podcast is titled, Nonprofit Problem Solver. To me, thought leadership is one of the ultimate tools in your toolbox for, anything marketing and development. This is the nonprofit problem solver. And it just is a new spin on one of those tools that's just been kind of sitting there. But it's a little risky, perhaps. It feels a little risky, but if you just put some good guidelines around it, it can be an incredibly, tremendously effective way to solve some distinct problems, like development, like fundraising, like connection building and network building. It's just that powerful. And I can give an anecdote if it would be helpful here.
Yeah.
All right. So got to connect with a large national funder talking about what thought leadership means to them. What does it do for them as a funder when they're considering who to invest in? And I brought up this one particular organization. They have a podcast. And I said, if you had to pick between someone with a podcast and without, it's very base, if that's the only qualifier that was there. She said, oh,
Single criterion.
Single criteria. That's all there is. There are no other elements, right? But from that single criteria, she said, that's the direction things are going. And it's an easier sell to my board. If I bring them this organization who does work to put out best practices, to share what they know, to be current in this manner of communication. This is obviously the easier sell. And so that is a element of thought leadership is, a podcast is a vehicle for that. So
we'll get into some of the hows in a minute. Just sort of like rounding off this reason why you do it. I think the way I would sort of summarize what I think you said, and you tell me if I've got this wrong, is that if you are prepared to put yourself out there as a leader and use the digital platforms and so on, whether it's podcasting or what have you, and make those human connections purely in pursuit of the mission, the information, pushing the ideas around that you are finding out in your work and discovering in the area of nonprofit work that you do, it has a positive benefit for your fundraising, even if you're not directly fundraising when you do your thought leadership stuff. It has a benefit on your board exposure, or bringing people into your board, even though that's what you're not specifically doing when you're doing thought leadership. It builds partnerships in your community. It builds your marketing brand, even though you are not directly marketing. So all the things that you want to do, this is sort of a glue that, or almost a catalyst for them in some ways, unwittingly, because it's not your primary objective.
Correct.
But it seems to me that your primary objective is around building your community and making those connections and just sort of spreading the word.
Spreading the word. I love that. You're really great at boiling down long-winded discussions. So, and I'll throw one other added benefit in there. You may be at your organization for a long period of time, right? but you also may have future aspirations. You may want to write a book. You may want to advance to a next level of where you're going to be doing your work, right? So it will help you significantly. It really will. I mean, if I'm a recruiter, if I'm out there looking for our next CEO or ED, you know for sure I'm going to be looking to see how well they leverage their influence. It's pretty critical nowadays. So I have a feeling if you're in a nonprofit executive training program, or certainly on the corporate side, they are teaching you how to leverage your personal brand. They're teaching you how to start from the very beginning, like from day one of whatever work you're doing. Like you graduate, you start building your personal brand. It's that important. And so we don't want to wait anymore to start doing this. It doesn't matter what space you're in. It doesn't matter what your aspirations are. It will be an asset to you. It will be an invaluable asset to you for whatever you're going to do next, and help you to get there anyway. Because the more people see your work and see the passion for what you do and see how you articulate your mission, that they are looking for people. So I'll pause there and just say, does that make sense?
I think that's great, because what I was going to get into was the sort of final barrier, I think, psychological barrier for people who are current nonprofit leaders and who've been toying with the idea of thought leadership or personal branding. They may already play this role as the face of their organization,
right?
But how do they reconcile the apparent division, distinction, possibly tension between thought leadership on behalf of the organization and its mission versus personal brand? And based on what you're saying, they're not really in conflict, but people can. It's not crazy to presume that they are, is it?
It's not, and a lot of it I think comes down, rather than the outward expression, it's the inner motivation. Whatever you go and
you say more about that. It's less the outward expression than the inner motivation.
Yeah,
because I think that again, that points to the sort of this where people are psychologically. Is if you really want to put yourself out there, however prepared you are to go through the ickiness of doing it if you're uncomfortable, and getting used to that you still have to believe that it is important for your organization and not just for yourself, right?
Yes, you do. There's not really an easy way to sit down and very quickly do a big shift in someone's perspective and mindset about this. And so generally we say you have to start before you're comfortable with it, but understanding what your objectives really are. If you have 3 top objectives, and number 1 might be, I really want to make a difference. I want to shift culture in this area that I care about a lot. And a big way we do that, of course, is by communicating about the things. So, but my next one might be, I want to help my organization do some real, all the things that we need to do on the development side, right? And then number 3 is, I want to write a book one day, maybe. And so if you keep your objectives in line, if you're able to look at those fairly consistently until they are just cemented in your brain, it helps push down anything that does feel disingenuous. It helps you stay on track for when you start to write that day. It helps you just remember your why. Remembering your why is important. And it's nice because with this, it helps us really identify the people that give a darn in their space, because it does come through. It does. But even if it doesn't feel like it does, but you deep down, you have it in you, it's just an unpracticed area. The more you set about doing it and the more you watch people who do it well, you get good at it. So.
And is it fair to say, in a general sense, that the extent to which leaders are prepared to be the face of their organization and lead in thought and get out there on the platforms is clearly part of their personal brand? They're going to put it on their resume, stuff that they're prepared and able and willing to do this, but they're doing it on behalf of their organization. So it's in a sense a public facing, exposed, if you will, way of doing their job.
It really is. And you can tell me all day long that you care about cross-sector innovation and solutions to problems. You can tell me all day long that you want to move the needle in your town, in your community, and you want to build consensus. But and if you're skipping this part, you're just leaving some major untapped ground, because the conversations are happening with or without you. I mean, people
Right.
are already doing this, and your voice really does need to be heard.
Well, so, I mean, and social change is not restricted to your own organizational boundaries. So,
So,
I mean, you've heard me say this over and over again, as a nonprofits are a team sport. And that applies both
yes,
within your organization and within your communities, and building those partnerships. And so on the organizational lines, you, in a sense, want to fade away. You don't really, it's not that we don't care about them, but they're not the defining feature of how we make our changes.
they're
In
not,
our
but
social impact.
I want to hear what's going on with your organization. If you don't talk about it ever, I'm confused. I want to hear,
What
hey,
what
we're
what I
working.
mean is you're
Yeah.
building bridges with other organizations. If you're,
Oh,
to your
yes,
point,
yes.
if you're not sharing that,
Yeah,
you're not building, participating in those conversations, as you said, you're missing things out.
you are.
Okay, great. All right. So now we've got somebody who is geared up to do it. It only took us 21 minutes to get there, but we got
There's a
someone.
lot of foundation to cover here. Skip the rest if you had to, but that was
Okay, so
it.
someone's for it. Now we've got the why.
Yes,
We've got some ideas of what our objectives are. I don't think we need to get in deep into sort of metrics, or how we know that we're successful. Um, but let's think then about the how. So
sure.
if I'm a nonprofit leader, and I've got real passion about my area, and I've got some expertise and so on, I say, I'm really interested, Julie, or my board has told me that I should be really interested in
Yes.
being a thought leader.
Terribly
Where
often.
do I start? What do I do?
Think about where you are comfortable already, where you are most comfortable. For a lot of folks, they like the idea of writing, but do they do it? No. No, because it's very time consuming for a lot of folks to sit down and actually conceptually develop and refine, and it's still just challenging for them. For others, they would rather do kind of like what we're doing right now, just sit down and talk to a friend and discuss things that they like to talk about. If that's easier, just think about what are you comfortable doing to express the ideas that you have. So let's say you've got that figured out. Well, what's next? It's thinking about where you like to spend time online. So we're just going to do at its most high level sense, and thinking about the digital world that we live in right now. You can write a book, but writing, that's later. That's after you've been writing and being seen a lot online already, right? So, but we'll come back to that piece because it's important. But let's think about social media. Where do you like to be? If you hate Instagram, don't think about Instagram right now. If you do not, whatever social platforms you actually would instinctively go to when you had a spare minute, start there and just start thinking about what it is that you are really good at, what it is you really care about. And how can you then take some of the ideas in your mind and put them out there? So writing a little bit every week, even for people who don't like to write, is a good habitual exercise to start, right? Speaking and just putting something on the calendar, something very simple, just like this, a video that you upload, a 5-minute conversation, or just you speaking into your phone for 5 minutes and uploading that video once a week. Just really basic little tiny micro goals to get you started doing something. So, what do you think of micro goals?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. For some people, though, a 5-minute video in their phone once a week doesn't sound micro at all.
Thank you. That's good feedback. Okay. So, what if it were once a month? Is
Well, I
it
don't think it's the
too much
frequency.
time?
I
Is
don't
it
think it's
the
the
speaking?
frequency.
Yeah.
It's so much of saying, I don't feel comfortable seeing my face on. I think people with Zoom are, and on all the calls that people have been doing are a bit more comfortable
Yeah,
with seeing
absolutely.
themselves on video now.
Yes. It's easier now.
Uh, and obviously the technology's moved on. The social media
Yep.
platforms, every platform accepts, all the algorithms actually promote videos more
They
than
do.
anything else.
Yes.
So I think that is probably a barrier that no matter where you are, you're going to have to break, aren't you? You're going to have to be
You really are going to
comfortable.
have to break it between now and, give yourself some time. Give it like a month of just going, okay, I got to get my head around this. I have to just start recording. If I like speaking more than writing, I'm going to record just for me. just for myself, just to get used to that first half of the process.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah, please.
How much of it should be scripted? And how much of I mean, this is because
an important question.
We can accept from, again, like on our time on Zoom calls and so on, that we don't actually need to have super high production values. We don't have to have the brilliantly well lit studio. You know, you could be up in the top floor of your home with, like I am, and just get on with it. However, is it important to have a tightly scripted set of things to say, or should you, is one of the skills that you would recommend learning to speak spontaneously about your topic?
That is definitely what I would probably go as level 2, is really thinking about the content. But the opening is important. Having a few bullets of what you want to cover is important. Rehearsing it a couple times for some people is really helpful. Trying to time yourself as you say, okay, today I'm going to talk about this topic. Okay, so then time it, if nothing else. If you won't rehearse it out loud, time it just as you're thinking through it. Like, you don't even need to say it, just grab a timer and see how long it takes you to just think through what you want to say. Little exercises like that will help, but having a strong opening is important. Making sure that people know at the beginning, today I want to talk about the reasons why blank is a really significant challenge for blank, but we could actually do blank about it. Something like that. So then people aren't just kind of wondering the whole time as you're talking, what are we talking about? You know,
right.
Giving them a reason to stay. And then not overly scripting. We don't want to sit and watch me read off of a script right now. It might help a little bit because I'm also getting used to public speaking and to trying to take what's in my brain and put it out there on video, right? But no, don't overly script it, but just have some foundational bullet points of what you want to cover. Make sure that you're clear on that flow of information and wrap it up by something thoughtful. If it's not a distinct call to action, like write your Congress people, something like that. Or
Right.
Let's say, in thinking about the development side of things, if you want people to give to a thing right now, if you're doing fundraising right now, don't talk about it all the time. That's not what this is for. Do it occasionally. Do it maybe half the time, 30% of the time, but not all the time. You're trying to get people to buy into the idea. They will not give you money unless they want your idea to succeed, right? So, yeah.
Right. Okay, two other points there.
Mm-hmm.
I want to draw. So one, you said about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that your recommended length of time for the video to go on to, say, LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube? Those are the 3 platforms we're on at the moment. Would you suggest that those, rather than trying to get into the 60 seconds or 30 seconds type of sound bites, because people just don't have the attention span these days?
They don't. They really don't. But if you're thinking about what's level 1, it's very difficult to be short, to have brevity, to be really effective in a short amount of time. So if you're just starting out, you
can't say a whole lot.
The videos will be a lot longer, and that's just, it is what it is. But as you get better, you do want to get shorter. And but you also want to just see, on a platform like YouTube, if I'm going to take my video and put it on YouTube, which I definitely, separate for another time, but you can see when people tune out. You can see how long they stick for, and that's really interesting to know.
Right.
But, on LinkedIn, you're probably not going to get that. You're just going to get views. Look and see, okay, I did the 3 videos. Which one did seem to get more interest, and if anyone engaged around it? Short is hard, but with practice, you will get there. So, yeah.
There's that old, sorry, I just remember that saying that if you want me to speak for, if you want me to speak for an hour, I need 5 minutes to prepare.
Yeah.
If you want me to speak for 5 minutes, I need an hour to prepare. And I think it's true, because if you have an hour to just to fill time, you can just riff. But here's then the other point. How clear do you need to be about who your audience is if you're a thought leader. Clearly with social media, I mean, we go we haven't need to necessarily rehearse all this, but clearly with marketing and messages, if you're fundraising or you're marketing, searching for volunteer, whatever it is, your call to
Yeah.
action, it's got to be designed for that audience, and you're going on the right platform where your audience is, and so on and so forth. But with this, is it are those rules still apply the same way? You got to know who your audience is, or is it just you're just speaking more genuinely, like, this is what I care about? So I'm not worried about my audience. I'm worried about what I'm trying to project first, and we'll see if the audience, eventually evolves or
Yes, and
emerges.
yes, and yes, and yes. So, you probably do not have the audience that you want yet. I mean, even you and I, it's like we're still learning about who we feel like we can best serve to some extent, right? It's like we're still building towards new folks we haven't met and we want to meet. So they're not there yet, but we know that they will be. So thinking about if 6 months from now, the number of followers I have has tripled. Who do I want those numbers to be? Who do I care about? Who do I want to reach? Who do I want that in listening to what I have to say? Speak to them. Speak to that audience that you want to have come find your stuff. And there are things like leveraging hashtags and whatnot, but your audience is a thing that is what it is. Conversation yesterday with a great organization. They were trying to determine, well, our audience right now, we just did this audit on social, and our audience is not who we really want it to be. They're not our potential clients and customers. And I said, well, that is perfectly okay, because the people that come, I have a puppy at the door, Kev. It's so elegant. Thank you. The people in our audience does not have to be the people you want to work with, inevitably, right? It's like you may look and go, gosh, there's, truly nobody here I really want to be speaking to. But the people that will work with you, the people that will support you, they will pop over to see what they see, to check out what you're putting out there. And when they do, they might not follow you. They might not have any indication of engagement whatsoever. But when they get there, they need to have that table set for them, as it were.
Right.
Does that
So
make sense?
it does. I think what you're saying is go forth anyway. Don't worry about audience to begin with, but learn as you go.
Yeah.
And it does. You mentioned hashtags. It raises that point as well, I think, around the algorithms and the manipulation of the platforms around how much of the audience growth can you really generate with hashtags and keywords and those sorts of things, as opposed to just the content that you're putting out? It's really the latter, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the quality of the content, isn't it? And don't
Yes
we
and
want to
no.
believe it is?
It's a little bit of everything, right? But if you watch how people use hashtags on the respective platforms, Instagram, people are much more, it seems like Instagram will always and forever be a place where hashtags are very important, and maybe more important than other platforms. On LinkedIn, I think we're still trying to kind of test the waters with those and see how people interact with them. But you use them anyway, and it helps both the platform and its algorithms, but also people can follow a hashtag and see when things pop up. So it's a little bit of both. But on Instagram, I mean, if I put a post out on Instagram, I can see that about, upwards of 30% sometimes of the people who looked at that post came from hashtags. It's not that way on LinkedIn. So it's less.
No.
And the numbers there are a little different to look at, but it's definitely worth grabbing a few that you talk about often. You'll see now on LinkedIn, they have creator mode, and there will be like 5, give or take 5 hashtags and terms that you talk about on your platform. And including those in the content you put out is important.
Okay, so you need to be clever about it, but you couldn't rely entirely on those things to build an audience, could you?
Can't retire entirely on anything. You just have to just figure
Right.
out what your own personal workflow is. Just get used to doing, a couple of foundational things. And it'll just build from there. So I hate to get too granular on this, because right now it
Right.
really is just about starting and, not getting tripped up on any of the techniques. just start. It's build a body of work, build a body of content. It doesn't matter even what it is at this point. You are in your role of leadership for a reason. You were put there for a reason. And now you just need to put what is in your mind out there. So,
And yeah, that's really useful. And I think there's certain platforms that are better for projecting. Like you mentioned, YouTube. It's a search engine, it's a video search engine, and you can use it as
massive.
a platform to put lots and lots of stuff on it. It's in sense easier than putting it on your own website, or you can put it
Yes.
on both, of course. What about the idea of a podcast? So, you mentioned that, and I also want to hear your views on the audio apps like Clubhouse
Yeah.
and those that they seem to be, unexpectedly popular in that there isn't any video on Clubhouse,
Yes.
but yet some people have been very successful in building followings on the audio app.
Indeed. So each has its own reasons and usage, but what you do bring up at a higher level is thinking about the overall, like if we're to think about the A to Z of creating content and where it goes and what it does, you don't want to be trying to think about, well, I'm going to throw this onto Instagram and this onto YouTube, and I don't really know what to do today, and where do I start? That's crazy. No one wants to do that. And it's a big time waster too. So if I'm a consultant and I'm just starting off and I don't have a marketing department, I have to be very thoughtful with how I use my time. So have a workflow set up that includes the platforms that are important to you. So if, for example, we take a video like today and it lands, we know we're going to put it on YouTube because YouTube creates shareable links. It can embed anywhere and everywhere, and it gives you some fabulous metrics. And so, like, let's say you put the full length video there. It also, if you look at any author today, Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, any big author, even smaller, newer authors, it is a fabulous place to build a library, to build, readership and support. So just sticking it there cannot fail you. And to your point, it's an incredible search platform. It's Google owned, right? It's built for search perfection. So it's fabulous. So it starts there. And then if possible, you want to find some great, like even one great takeaway that you can take out of there using your phone, an editing app on your phone, pull out a great clip. And you're going to want to take that. And if you have an email list, it's something that goes in your email. It's a video embedded in there. Almost every email platform has one. It's what becomes your social media content. You post that small video to your social platforms. Or you just type out the comment that you liked the most, and that's your social media. So creating that workflow to where you know where the platforms are going to get that body of content built, and where you're going to show up. You don't have to do it everywhere. If you're never going to interact on Instagram, don't start thinking about Instagram right now. Add it when it makes sense to you and where there's a business case for it or a personal case for it. So, but then, yes, so we have our audio platforms. There will always be another platform. Always.
Yeah.
If you like to be there, if you can see that it makes sense for you and you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. See what you can do if you are going to give it a shot to repurpose that content. So today, for the Clubhouse that you brought up, we're going to record that. We're going to take that and do a very similar workflow with it because we want people who can't make that discussion time to get to hear some insights from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yes, in summary, use what makes sense. There will always be another platform, but only use it if it makes sense. You haven't got to try. You'll never get ahead of the curve, really, and that's not so much the point.
It's not the point, definitely. But just finding where it's not torture for you to show up. It's not awful for you to show up.
You've got to enjoy it, right?
You got to have a little bit of fun. Some things will be more fun for you than others. But if there really is a business case and it's not fun just yet, see what you can do to bring people alongside you to help make it fun. Like people to interview, people to talk to. Yeah.
But you and I are extroverts, so we love doing this stuff anyway.
I don't know about that, Kev.
Not everyone is.
Not everyone is. All right. So you bring up a really important point. My husband, business partner, David, he would be face down after something like this. Introverts, to do a interview like this, he can teach and come alive. He gets on a platform, on a stage, he comes alive. It's incredible. But he may be utterly depleted after a one-on-one phone call like this, figuring out what sucks the life out of you and trying to minimize that lift is important. Know where you can best be. So
Yeah, and again, it's like trial and error. You might
yeah,
think that ideally, this part of your workflow is going to be an essential component. Only you find that you dread it every day or every time you have to do it, and as you said,
yeah,
it sucks the life out of you. So that's something you've got to omit
you've
in
got to
some
take
way
in
and work
mind.
around it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And the point of this again really is to build your brand. And if you hate it, you will not show up there for long. And it will be a platform that looks lifeless and neglected. Like that's not helpful for you or
no,
anyone. So
no.
yeah.
No, and the algorithms really penalize you too if you if you start something and
Yeah.
don't follow through. You're not consistent.
No.
So let's round this off then by trying to just summarize what are reasonable expectations. So no one's really starting from scratch. So you're probably further along than you think you are. But if you feel like you're starting from scratch, if you were advising someone or me to just start, um, getting things out there, and I do the micro goals of 5 minutes into my phone once a week, and I start to I put them on YouTube and so on, and I slowly learn how to manipulate the algorithms in my favor, like using hashtags and that sort of thing. What's a reasonable expectation? Because you and I want to tie this back to what you said at the beginning around the self correction,
Yeah.
because we know when we put something out there and we're looking for this human connection, people will respond or they may not, and they
Yep.
may respond positively, they may respond negatively. uh, there's other ways of responding. What's a reasonable expectation when you start this?
Reasonable expectations look like you have a long runway and you make a decision that it does not matter how you feel and it does not matter what you see as immediate results. You're going to do this for 6 months. No one gets anywhere with a half-hearted goal. It will not produce anything for you. You need to just not even think about it like that. This is
Six
going to
months minimum, so more like really 9 to 12.
Kev, I'm going to tell you, you need to start and not stop.
Like
Like
forever,
there's
right? This
no,
becomes
yeah,
part of
like
your life.
this is our not just our responsibility. This is our I'm sure that there's some great words for it, but like this is your duty. This is your role. This is built into job descriptions. This is built into successful next things that you do. This is why let's say, going back to this idea of writing a book. If I'm a publisher, no more am I looking for the next star hidden in, the coal and diamond. I want someone who's
Diamond
already
in
a
the rough,
star. Yeah.
someone in the corner of a coffee shop
Yes.
slaving away on their laptop. That's not who you
That
want, is
person
it?
will not get a book deal anymore. There are no
Yeah,
book deals for unknown stars.
right.
All that
You
there
got to have a platform.
is you've been building a platform for a long period of time. Yes, you can stop for summer. It's fine. But this is your life now.
Right.
This is your life now. And if you want to have a great next job, if you want to have a book one day, if you want to have great success in your organization, I cannot be more plain when I say it's not even about what oh look, I have success. I'm seeing there isn't that. It's just do I want to be successful where I'm at right now? Do I want to be successful where I'm at next? I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to put this in my schedule. I'm going to make this a part of my job description. And I'm going to do it and I'm going to be consistent at it. I'm going to do something once a week from here until I take a break over Christmas. And even then, it's like you might get inspired. Please don't see it like, oh, I need results. It's like I wish that there were. You will see like things pop up. Hey, I'm reaching out because I saw that you care about this, and we here at this huge corporation that just relocated from California to Texas, we care about that too. That's the success you're going to start to see.
Right.
And we want that, right? It's like people say, you need to be on the Ellen show. You just need to go talk to that big car manufacturer corporate office that just landed here. Well, this is how that happens. because you're putting things out there that connect and resonate and you sound genuine and authentic. And they go, hey, if we're going to do this in the community, why don't we go and do it with them? They obviously do great work. They will be a good steward of our influence and our investment.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Carry on it for a long time. So last thing I'm going to ask you is, are written blogs a thing of the past? Do people bother reading anymore?
I love
Is
this
everything
topic.
on video? The reason I
Yes.
ask is because obviously that would you'd be forgiven for thinking that's the case. But I did see a Twitter thread not long ago complaining about the dominance of video. And people decide saying, I don't want this. I want to read. Send me the transcript because I can read it faster than I can listen to you.
I know. All right. So let's talk about this. If you have a website, and we all do, either your personal brand has a website or you're thinking about doing one because you need to do it, or your organization does. What is on that website? Yeah, sometimes there's video. Sometimes we embed video, and that's great. But it's the written word. It's how SEO works. It's not fancy, secretive coding back end. It's not that. People find you on Google because you write great content and Google knows how to find it. And so the written word is not dead. It will never die. It is just I may say never and whatever it does 50 years from now. That's not the point. Right now, the written word is critical. It will be for at least, the window that I see. Don't stop writing. Someone in your organization
So
needs to
500
write.
word blogs are still recommended. If that's what someone wants to do. And sorry?
That's a little short. So 500 words is not a bad place to start. But you can write for longer and you can piece it out. And there's different types of, it depends on what you're trying to solve for. If you're just trying to solve for, hey, I need to write, then that's a great place to start. If you're trying to solve for SEO, then it needs to be longer and a little bit more built together in like an ecosystem of like, hey, we write on this topic and then we're going to do, adjacent things that are really supportive of this main idea. So write for sure. LinkedIn has a wonderful, so there are LinkedIn articles that we see. Write and post, if I'm going to do long form writing once a month, I'm going to take half of it. I'm going to put half on my personal website or half on my organization website. And the other half goes on LinkedIn as an article. So write if you can, put someone in your organization on writing if you're not a writer, or have them ghostwrite for you.
Right. Okay. So half on the first half on LinkedIn or the second half?
Put what, think about what you like to read on LinkedIn, because what you like to read on LinkedIn is probably a little different than what you like to read on someone's website. So thinking about it in terms of your own personal habits, you are probably not that different than the people you want to attract. What makes you read something? Like at the end of the day, all of this, think about what you do. Someone will ask me, when do I send an email? When do you read email? Sometimes it's the middle of the night in places like whatever room of the house, bathroom, kitchen, etc. Think about your habits. Make that a place to start. So think about how long the videos are that you watch. Think about how long the podcasts are that you listen to. Think about what kind of topics you read about and how people pull you in. And when you get bored, when do you tune out? Think about how to eliminate that from your workflow.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Excellent. Lots of great tactical tips there. Okay. Fantastic. I know you've got another appointment to rush off to shortly, so we'll bring this to a close. Lots of fantastic ideas on how to get started with thought leadership, what it actually means, how to do it. But the key lesson, overarching lesson, is do it. It's the Nike rule, right?
It is. And you will be so pleased with what you see come out of it. I absolutely can commit to that. Unless you just really try to fail, it will produce good things for you. It is not that hard. Find people to follow, get inspired, and you will be like, wow, this would have never happened. Like this fantastic opportunity never would have happened if they hadn't seen what I had put out on social the other day.
Great. So we had some really positive comments from folks on Facebook. Can you remind everyone, Julie, and I don't think I asked you this at the beginning, actually, where people can find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn a ton. Follow me there. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Julie Morris on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. This has been episode 55 of the Nonprofit Problem Solver. We'll be back next week with John Williams telling us about culture. So hope to see you then live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. See you then, folks.
Thanks.
Bye.